Afternoon, everybody, and thank you so very much for tuning back in. We unfortunately did not have a very long lunch break, but not to worry. We will have a working lunch and listen to our fabulous panel that has been assembled. The next panel is talking about a very relevant subject, which is collaboration. More importantly, it's collaboration for coexistence, but from an HR perspective, largely led by our co-host of the event, the Southern Gujarat Chamber of Commerce and Industry, in short known as SGCCI. The panel is led by our dynamic Mr. Mrinal Shukla, the founder and chairman of Intellectual Provisor. We have had a lot of conversation and exchanges, and it's time for me to appreciate all the help he has extended to us for this summit. And he is sort of the pivotal person for SGCCI as far as we are concerned to be able to showcase the event. And I thank him and SGCCI for being the co-host of the event. Mrinal will be leading the session as the session lead, followed by Dr. Niravmandir. He is the Chief Human Capital Officer of Sri Ramakrishna Exports. Mr. Nirav Jogani, the Vice Chairman of RSM Astute Consultech. I'm sorry. We have Dr. Rohit Singh. He is the Dean of Academics in the Oro University. And Mr. Rohit Mehta, the President of the Indo-Thai Chamber of MSMEs. I mean, this is a great panel of entrepreneurs, of HR professionals, very senior people who have been there, done that from the academia. So it's going to be very interesting for us to start discussing how collaboration would work in the current context and how to look at it from an HR perspective, as this is an HR conference. So we want to all request the panelists to kick off the session with, I would request my good friend, Mr. Mrinal Shukla, the convener for the session, to take this further, please. Mr. Mrinal.
Thank you very much, Sridharji. On behalf of the SGCCI, we appreciate this very prestigious event, and we appreciate that you kindly involve us as a partner in this event, and it's going so nicely that we are so happy.
Thank you, sir.
So, good afternoon to very learned panelists. They are not only learned speakers, they are learned speakers as well as they have spent a good time. They have very vast experience in that particular. To welcome all of you, and I would like to pose one question to everybody, to all who have joined this panel discussion. How are you? I believe that within this 4 or 5 months, this question must be posed. FAQ, frequently asked questions, and very necessarily required to be. So, how are you? How are you convinced? How is your physical and mental health? How is your professional health? Health of your family, your friends, your business counterparts, how they all are. This question is very important for all of us during this pandemic situation. We all know before Corona, we were passing through crisis in business already. Corona pandemic has worsened the situation. We are facing lots of challenges like financial crunches, shortfall in sales, employee transit and reverse transit. Very importantly, reverse transit is also happening. That time has taught us some good things like taking care of ourselves and taking care of others. Habit of savings, reserve funds, taking advantages of modern technology, learn, unlearn, and relearn so many things. Importance of HR is felt immensely during recent time. We know South Gujarat is fortunate to have 0% unemployment as well as almost 0% activities pertaining to trade unions. But still, challenges are so big that we have to rethink, replan, re-strategize whole exercise. We have to look beyond certain things and out of the box. That should be our new normal exercise. People on both the hands, employee and employers, are facing uncertainty of financial stability, job security, etc. But every cloud has a silver lining. Today we will try to learn about new normal. We have very learned and experienced speakers from different segments, as I said earlier. We welcome Dr. Rohit Singh, Professor and Dean of Oro University. Especially, we would like to know from you, Mr. Rohit, how are you preparing your students to take challenges of bridging the gap between corporate's demand and fulfilling them by acquiring necessary skills? Welcome, Rohit Singh ji.
Thank you so much.
Welcome. We have another speaker. We welcome Mr. Rohit Mehta, who is former president of the Southern Gujarat Chamber of Commerce and Industry and currently president of Indo-Thai Chamber of MSMEs. Mr. Rohit will address challenges and remedies of MSMEs. Rohit bhai, welcome. Mr. Rohit Mehta, welcome. We have two Rohits and we have two Niravs. Now I will introduce. I welcome. Yeah, it is a coincidence. Correct. I welcome Mr. Nirav Jogani, Vice Chairman, RSM Astute Consultant Private Limited. Mr. Nirav has dealt with finance as being a chartered accountant. He has very well dealt with finance and technology. So he will enlighten us about high-tech automation and human values too. Welcome, Nirav Jogani ji.
Thank you.
Last but not the least, I welcome Dr. Niravmandir, who has been instrumental to bring this event to SGCCI. Dr. Nirav has vast experience of human behavior as well as in-depth knowledge of HR because he has strong educational background with vast practical experience. He is Chief Human Capital Officer at Sri Ramakrishna Export, a leading diamond manufacturing and export company. Dr. Nirav takes care of 5,000 plus team members of SRK having turnover of 8,000 plus crores Indian rupees. So now time has come to discuss about better understanding, better cooperation through better communication, technology versus human touch, mutual trust and integrity through our topic, collaborate for coexistence, the HR perspective. I would like to invite all the speakers one after another and they will present their thoughts before us. Firstly, I would like to invite Dr. Rohit Singh. I would like to give his brief, rather I have already given very brief introduction of all the speakers. So please pardon me. We have limited time. We have to give so many things in limited time frame. Yeah. So I am sorry to give very elaborate introduction of all the speakers. So with your permission, my all dear speakers, we begin with Dr. Rohit Singh. He is a Dean of Oro University and a Professor in Marketing. Dr. Rohit Singh, please put forward your ideas.
Thank you so much, Munal Chuklaji. Pleasure to be on the panel on Collaborate for Coexistence, the HR Perspective. And thank you, Sridharji, for giving us the opportunity to present our views. and my honorable members and the delegates virtually. The basic reason why we are here is because there's a strong bondage between the academic institutions and the industry. And the bondage is more important because in this time of crisis, when everybody is having a shortage either of fund or human resources, we need to come together and play a very vital role and pivotal role into this process. Normally, if you see that the students who are studying in institutions, they are need to be absorbed by the industries which are there in the community in the form of companies, in the form of offices, in the form of manufacturing or whatever it is, even in consultancy, because Neeraj is here, he will be knowing more in detail about it. The biggest challenge which we come into discussion often with the industry is that is my student who is going out of the particular program, is he employable? Now, the question is whether he is employable or not, because the employability capability of the higher education students, they are limited. And the demands and the needs of the skill sets which are required by the industry, they are variable. So there is a limitation of the knowledge, there is a variation in the requirement of the industry, and these two never matches together. So there is a huge gap. So the first thing which an industry and education institution has to do is to identify the gap analysis in terms of the requirement by the industry and in terms of the human resources with the education. What we are trying to do and why we often complain. When we say why we often complain, it is education institution and industry both. Why they complain? And they say that the employability skills which a student has or the employability programs which the institutions run often neglect the requirement of the industry. So the question is, there is a need but which has been ignored or neglected by the education institutions. And second is, there is a rapid paradigm shift which is coming on because of industry 4.0, technology 4.0, and at the same point of time, education itself has to reach to that level of education 4.0. And the gap between industry 4.0 and education 4.0 is only going to be possible when this analysis is being done in collaboration and conjunction with all the stakeholders. And when I say stakeholders, primarily it is between the education institutions and the industry per se. And till the time these two come onto the same platform, this gap will always persist. I give you one a very small example, and the example is a book which was written some 4 years back is being taught here, and the students studying into the current program is going to graduate after 2 years. There is a total gap of 6 years. And there's a lot of changes which has already been taken place in the industry, which a student is not aware of. Now, there are two questions. Institutions say, we are providing you ready-made students, you can absorb them. Industry says, no, they are not as per a requirement. And if industry want to upskill them, now skilling has been done, there is an upskilling requirement or reskilling requirement, there is a cost to that. Is industry ready to share that cost element in skilling and reskilling that student again for the process of their requirement? So it has a cost element which at any very initial phase, industries are very skeptical to spend upon. So the question comes, if an institution has to match that industry 4.0 requirement, what it has to be done? My first suggestion and observation is, submission to this panel is, there should be a proper integration of skill training programs which are being conducted into the industry. At the same time of point, there is a skill development programs which are happening in the education institutions. These two need to be combined together. And if you see the latest report by the National Human and Resource Development Center, it says that the 5 essential industry 4.0 skills which are being needed by the industry among the students who are coming into for the employment. First is the communication. Second is they should be very much upgraded on social skills. They must be a team working and the interpersonal skills equipped. They should also possess the leadership skill. Now, the situation is when the student is entering into the organization, he may not be promoted to the top level immediately, but he should have the ability to work with the leaders also. That is what I mean to say over here. And the fifth very important one is the critical thinking and the problem solving skill. Nowadays, a lot of education institutions, they ignore this. So how we will bridge this gap in collaboration with the industry? So honestly, the onus is on the education institutions. We need to bring those new pedagogical tools and strategies which can map the requirement of the industry through the active learning engagement process. And when I say active learning engagement process, then I should have Niravmandir, I should have Neeraj Joganiji, I should have Rohit Mehta Sahab, I should have Munalji into my class on a monthly basis. And they can bring that change onto the real-time basis into the classroom teaching and learning. Now, there were certain other skills which have already been highlighted and in the United Nations Self-Development Goal, which has been included into the new education policy, is that the business studies program which are running across, or the technical programs which are running across the institutions, they should have a multidisciplinary approach. And what does it mean? It's very simple, is does my program have a business orientation learning among the students, so when they graduate, they can easily go and work in the industry? I personally feel it is not. So the second suggestion is there should be a proper integration between the education institutions and the industry so that we can integrate all these factors. Now question comes, how we are going to do that? So does the education institution and industry meet often? To be very sorry at this point of time, is I can say no, often not. Once in 6 months, and that is not done. We should have a regular interaction happening between the academy and the industry so that we can bring those latest happening into the classroom teaching and learning. So that, as it is directly said, it is the hard skill which will help you to rise. But if you lack soft skill, you cannot sustain into the corporate world. So the academia should focus on imbibing the hard skill and the soft skill into the teaching and learning process. And one last suggestion which I would like to give through this panel is there should be a strong interaction happening through various forums between the industry and the academia to understand what are the new perspectives which are coming into the working scenario within the industry, so that the same perspective can be taught into the classroom teaching learning process. So the very common terminology which we use is my student industry ready. The answer comes from the industry, no, it is not. So the question is, then what they have done in those 2-3 years to go and get directly absorbed? It is not happening. So that gaps further extend by 6 months. So the total gaps comes into picture is 6.5. So student by that time lose the focus of working into the particular sector, and then he jumps into some other sector or the area where he or she is not interested. So the role which we should play is giving the adequate skill. We should at the same point of time have a joint program which can focus on reskilling the students' required capabilities. And at some point of time, the academic can work effectively with the industry and help in the upskilling of their employees also. So it is not always that the industry requirement, academic requirement is there. Sometimes industry people are these trainers to train their people who are working for the last 4, 5, 10 years. That upgradation can also happen by the mutual exchange of human resource between the academic and the industry. And I feel the active, the powerful linchpin between the two is, one is the learning center in the industry, other is the placement center in the institution. If these two can collaborate effectively in the form of career development within the industry and the academics, I feel that is going to play a dominant role in bridging that gap. And remember one thing, student is always employable. And employable here means he cannot be unemployed. So the point is where we can match his employability skill sets to the requirement of the industry. That is the role we have to play, I feel. And that is how I put my thoughts in front of you, Mrunalji. Take it forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Rohit Singh ji. You have posed your point so well, and you have posed before people who are leading their industries, Dr. Nirav and Nirav Jogani and Rohit Mehta. So you have very properly put your point before right people also. You said about education 4.0, scaling and rescaling, and you asked for industry people to join hands, which is very important if you want to make them industry ready, corporate ready. So during my question answer, I would come back to you. I have some questions derived from your presentation, but now it's time to invite Nirav Jogani. Nirav Jogani is Vice President, RSM Astute Consultant Group. He is, RSM Astute Consulting Group is the 6th largest accounting consulting group in India with a team of 1,700 people. So Nirav has a very in-depth experience, not only knowledge, but he has got in-depth experience of dealing with the more than 1,700 people. So it is your floor now, Nirav Jogani ji. Please address.
Thank you, Mrunal bhai. At the outset, I would like to thank the organizers of this wonderful virtual summit and for giving me this opportunity to address the August audience. It is really my honor and pleasure. And I would really like to compliment the organizers and the entire team, as well as Dr. Niravmandir, Mrunalbhai, and everyone participating from SGCCI side also for the meticulous planning and the kind of speakers and everything just is myself focusing on collaboration truly captures the need of the hour. So in the earlier times, HR function was seen more from the point of view of the payroll processing or the legal compliances and the documentation and all. However, the role has changed and not changed. It is a significant change. In fact, in most of the new age companies, HR competes with the finance function. So in the earlier days, finance used to be the most important function for any organization because they determined how much profit the organization made and how it was made. However, I would now think, and especially for a lot of innovation-driven companies, HR is more important, in fact, than finance. And when we talk about collaboration, so there is always a healthy competition between the professionals and the functions in any business organization. But when the HR and the finance really collaborate, it can really create wonders. A lot of key performance indicators or key financial indicators which are important for any organization can really be driven or achieved with the help of the HR. So whether it is productivity improvements, new innovations, cost optimization, scalability of the business, you name it, the main business challenges are the challenges which probably the HR is the best positioned professional in an organization to really help. And I think HR is also very important from the point of view of crisis management. So in this lockdown days, we know there was a huge issue about payment of wages to workers because people could not work, people could not attend their factories or offices, and companies were facing a lot of challenges on the cash flows. And therefore, how do the companies or organizations pay their wages to workers? So it has a huge financial impact, but more importantly, it has a huge people impact as well. And therefore, organizations where HR collaborated with the finance and the production and the other business heads and the promoters, I think they were the best placed to really drive a very balanced view and approach in the best interest of the organization, and probably that has been very fruitful and more fruitful. So I think HR as a role, as a profession, as a position or a function in an organization is gaining more and more prominence, and I think in days to come it is going to be the most important function in an organization. Going one step in the future, I believe in the age where artificial intelligence is going to compete with human intelligence, where robots are going to compete with human labor, and where the availability of people is going to be abundant because the universities and our education system, as Dr. Rohit already mentioned, they are churning out a lot of new young people who are entering the employment scene. However, on the industry side, as we know, there is always a talent gap, a talent crunch. Companies find it really, really very difficult to get talented people for their needs, for their scaling up. And that again is a very important challenge, a role and an opportunity for the HR to really collaborate or create a between the academia and the industry and see how the needs of the organization are fulfilled. At the same time, the need and aspirations of the young people, like all these youth who come out from the universities these days, they have a very different level of aspiration, different level of ambition. Many times their skills don't match with their aspirations and the ambition, and that creates a whole lot of problem for the organizations as well as for the youth. And that is where the role of HR again becomes very important. How do they really collaborate with the CTO and the technology heads in the organization and come up with various programs to reskill the workforce, so that the gap between the aspirations and the abilities is properly bridged. Again, managing this youth, the young generation, is a different ball game. And while doing that, in any organization, there will be people who are older, who have been in the organization since years, and there could be some sort of friction which could be probably created. So, friction management, for the smooth functioning of an organization, how the communication and other channels are well geared up is all very important. How do the elder generation, or the generation which has been working in the organization since say 5-10 years, how they can be made relevant in the changing times where the technology is changing so fast. Like in few years, I very sincerely believe a lot of tasks that are currently done, a lot of repetitive activities in any organization is going to be taken over by technology, whether it is robotic process automation, robots, artificial intelligence, any sort of technology is going to do a lot of the things that currently humans do. And in such a case, then how do you really reskill the human resources for them to move higher in the ladder and take up the activities or tasks which the technology is not still able to do, or for guiding or monitoring what is happening on the technology? I think those are the challenges that the HR has to gear up with. At the same time, there are going to be a lot of ethical dilemmas. So retention versus growth versus loyalty versus compensation, compensation based on merits instead of seniority. Those are the emerging challenges which I think are going to be more and more important. Organizations which are really able to meet up to these challenges are able to create strategies which enable them to stay in sync with the changing landscape. They are going to survive. For a lot of others, especially the MSMEs, it is going to be really very difficult to keep in sync with the changing times. And therefore, again, collaboration as a concept becomes very important. I believe a lot of MSMEs will have to collaborate either within or between themselves or with larger organizations in order to survive and grow. And companies and entrepreneurs and organizations, I think, should be very open to doing that if they are really to be relevant in the new age. And I think, again, in this entire context and the discussion, the role of the HR, I think HR is now not limited to a function, a CXO position. It is a board level position. And how the HR provides the leadership and the direction and vision for this entire change for organizations to happen, and match the capability of the organizations to the organization to the needs of the business world. I think that is a bridge which has to be created, and in context of collaboration for coexistence, a very, very apt subject, and I believe it is going to be a very important role for the HR. To sum up, I think collaboration for coexistence is a mantra which organizations need to embrace to survive and grow. And before I end, I would again like to thank the organizers, my co-panelists, moderator ji, Unal bhai, Sridhar ji, and the entire audience for a very patient hearing. Thank you so much. Over to you, back to you, Mrunal bhai. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nirav Jogani ji. You addressed some very important points like HR and finance, but HR is more important in present context. And you said about, you touched artificial intelligence versus human intelligence. You talked about the role of HR in changing and challenging time. So you have covered so many things. And again, I would like to ask some questions while the question answer session. Sure. And my question would be, what can we do for the brain drain? That can be my question. human touch versus technology. That can be questions to be asked during question and answer session. Thank you very much, Nirav Jogani ji.
Thank you.
So, thank you. So we begin with Mr. Rohit, then we came to Nirav. Now again we should go to Rohit, and thereafter it will be again Nirav. So now I am going to introduce my very dear friend Rohit Mehta, who is a very versatile personality, who has been always a leader of the leaders. He has been former president of the Sanjuraj Chamber of Commerce and Industry. He has never vacated leadership. He has never created a vacuum in his career as a leader. At present, he is a president of Indo-Thai Chamber MSMEs. Rohit Bhai is associated with diamond industry, with fertilizer. He is a exporter also in fertilizers. He is into jewelry business also. He is into solar water pumps, real diamond jewelry. He has been past president of Surat JC's Surat Diamond Association, and Rohit Bhai, very important feather in his cap is he is a wonderful trainer. He is a internationally qualified trainer of JC's International. And Rohit Bhai, you are very important in this panel discussion because you will be leading problems and challenges and remedies for the MSMEs. So now it is your time, Rohit Bhai. Please enlighten us.
Thank you, Mrunal, for a very, uncalled for introduction. You've spoken too much about me. Anyways, I'll try to justify your expectations from me. Good afternoon, friends. Good afternoon or good morning, wherever you are placed all over the world, to all the people who are attending this particular panel discussion. It's a pleasure to talk to you in this HRM Summit India 2020 on the topic Collaborate to Coexistence, the HR perspective. I'm going to restrict my talk to human resource management in the micro, small and medium enterprises section, which I will refer to in short as MSMEs. Traditionally, human resource management in MSMEs has never been a well-organized or structured activity. More of immediate concern for the MSMEs is their day-to-day operations and running of their business and overcoming daily challenges. However, with the rise in competition, which calls for greater productivity and business output and growing demands by the employees, human resource management is becoming more and more important for the MSMEs. MSMEs are characterized by their very low financial as well as human capital. This makes it difficult for these enterprises to have a full-fledged in-house HRM activity. Normally, the owner of an MSME takes up multiple activities in his enterprise. As a result, he takes direct and fast decisions in a very less complicated process. There is nothing like an HR policy in place with less or almost no layers in hierarchy. In corporates and large enterprises, and Nirav Jogani mentioned a lot about the corporate culture. Mandir, Dr. Nirav Mandir will also be talking a lot about the corporate culture because he belongs to the corporate culture. The number of employees are many. This requires continuous and precise monitoring. Compared to this, there are very few employees in the MSMEs. Because of this, a dedicated HRM facility can result in a lot of unnecessary added costs. This is not to say the MSMEs do not understand the importance of human resource management. In MSMEs, this activity is controlled by the owner or a very close confident person of the owner from within the enterprise. This person may acquire sufficient knowledge or manage from the available resources for implementing human resource management. Since there is no continuous requirement, all At times, the HRM function is outsourced by MSMEs to professionals with specific skills and to get definite results. This is done for such a short span of time till required knowledge or expertise is gained by them. If HRM is outsourced, it requires investment in money. However, the entrepreneur gets enough time to concentrate on strategic business issues rather than looking after routine HR systems. This is where I see the strong possibility and opportunity for collaboration between MSMEs and HR management consultants. The MSMEs can concentrate on their core competence, which is business development, R&D, product and market development, and let the HR management consultants take care of the matters related to some of the core issues of HRM, such as number one, the HR policy manual. The HR consultant can be entrusted with the task of designing a well-structured HR policy manual. This has to be a detailed document, but broadly covering matters related to work profile, code of conduct, attendance and leave, promotion, salary increase, welfare of employees, performance evaluation and rewarding systems. Second, recruitment and retention. Recruitment becomes a very tricky issue where skill is an important requirement. The entrepreneur might end up taking on board persons of lesser skills because of family and peer pressures, and will have to live with this situation for a long time. It is best if professional help is taken for this sensitive task. Retention of skilled and experienced human capital can also be a daunting task. The involvement of a third party can ease out matters and settle them more amicably. Skill upgradation, and Nirav Jogani was also talking about skill upgradation. Dr. Rohit Singh also talked about the reskilling of the students coming out from the universities. In this fast changing world, sets of skills of extreme importance today may become obsolete in the very near future. This is a very hard reality we have to face. It is not right and even not possible at times to replace employees to these new skills. Old and trusted employees need to be retained, and for this, their skill upgradation becomes necessary. All these things can be outsourced to a dedicated HRM firm. Then is the need of the hour. A mutually beneficial arrangement between the MSMEs and HRM professionals to collaborate and coexist, thereby creating a win-win situation. I thank Ms. Helen Lobo and Impact Global and Mr. Sridhar for organizing this fantastic International HRM Summit, and to Mr. Mrunal Shukla from SGCCI for giving me the opportunity to air my views. And I thank all the participants who have given me a very patient hearing. Thank you all. Over to you, Mrunal.
Thank you very much, Rohit Bhai. You very rightly addressed the issues of MSMEs. You said about importance of HR, and you also discussed about professionals can be hired, as we have a very small team for MSME. So you rightly pointed out some important points. And again, I would come to ask you some questions whenever it will be a time. Sridharji, you are there, so you must be having some questions from audience also. So
we do have questions, Mr. Shukla. Unfortunately, we've completely run out of time. With all respect to the panelists, I do hope you to have your understanding, because the next two speakers, unfortunately, there is a new board meeting that they had to attend. But I do have a question that I would like also request the panelists, if you can find a minute or two, please log into the app there are some questions from other audience, other attendees. I would like you to please answer them, because ultimately every single question so I appreciate your kind indulgence and understanding in this matter. But I will just ask one question, if you don't mind. Mr. Shukla can answer that.
Sir, can I? We have only one panelist to address the audience. Can we take him and thereafter we go to the question answer round?
Sure, Dr. Mandir, of course we can make time for Dr. Mandir anytime, but we may not have the time for the question Q&A, but I would like to listen to Dr. Mandir for sure. Yes, please.
So without spending any more minute, I request Dr. Niravmandir to address the questions.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mral Bhai. So this is the best thing which I like about the panel discussion and being at last, because whenever your time comes, either you are running short of time, or either your fellow speakers have spoken everything which you can speak about. So that's the best part I like. Without further ado, I would like to very specifically talk about the paradox which is prevailing in the current crisis. I will be talking about only 4 paradoxes, and very specifically. The first paradox in the collaborate for coexistence, which I talk about, every big company was once a small company, but every small company will not become a big company. This is a paradox I talk about because Rohit Bhai has talked about MSME, and I will be talking about the large sector. So, and Neerav Bhai is there from the finance background, so I would correct me if I'm wrong. So we can rate the company either within 2 parameters, whether one is a small company or a big company, either through the revenue of the company or through the employee strength of the company. These are the core 2 parameters through which we can assess the company, with whether it's large or the small company. So the paradox has to be vital enough to understand the need of the organization, especially during this kind of a catastrophe. The second paradox I talk about, because generally we are in a dilemma that big companies and big companies acquire the small companies, and they are the large monster. They have always been considered like a large monster, but the reality is not the same. Big companies do not eat or beat the small company, but a fast company can beat the. And if you are a fast company, then you are having many more opportunities in compared to the slow company. And the moment that small company gets into transition to be the large company, and they are gradually losing their agility. It's like sailing into a boat and sailing into a big ship like Titanic. So iceberg kind of a catastrophe come in your way. It's really impossible to take the divergence or to divert the route instantly. So maintaining the agility while becoming big is really a kind of a critical thing in the current aspect. The third thing I would like to talk about, big companies are always been in fear either to lose their market capital, to lose their revenues, to lose their employee through the any of the processes. But the small companies are always seen excited about winning. So like it's a completely contradictory thing. So small companies are always, because they have nothing much to, they don't have nothing much to lose even in the given scenario. So there's the fourth and the last paradox which I would like to talk about. Small companies always must be thinking on the big platform or must think big, but at the same time the big companies still need to behave like a small company. So it's again a kind of a thing, because if I quote that the list of Fortune 500 companies which got first published in 1955, and more than 7,000 companies went into the list and came out from that list, but you'd be surprised to know that there are not more than 70 companies who were there in 1955 and they are still there in 2020. So it's kind of a dilemma which is prevailing between these big and the large companies, and it is the role of a HR leader to, in line with the CXOs of the organization, how they can do the required transformation, especially during this unprecedented time. Thank you very much, Munal bhai, and I'll hand over the floor to Mr. Sri. I think can be pondered upon.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mandir. In your own inimitable style, you have. Sorry. Am I audible?
Yeah,
Yes,
please.
thank you. In your own inimitable style, you have put forth 4 paradoxes, which is only going to make us think more and ask you more questions, for which unfortunately we don't have too much time. I personally have a lot of questions to ask, but then I'm going to take that offline with you, Dr. Mandir. And I just, with your permission, Mr. Shukla, if you don't mind, I just want to say a word of thanks to every person. I'd like to begin with the panelists. You have played very many roles as far as we are concerned for the HRM Summit. But first, as a moderator and the session lead, I'd like to thank you. I think you're close to 99 webinars during this lockdown period. So I wish you well for a quick century as well. Sure. I'd like to also thank Dr. Niravmandir, who has, of course, been very instrumental in making sure that this introduction between the HRM Summit Impact Global happened with our co-host SGCCI, and I really truly thank you from me and my entire team. Thank you so much, Dr. Mandir. I'd like to thank Dr. Rohit Singh for being on our panel and sharing a very interesting thought. I mean, some of the things that you talked about, employability skills and the gap between employment, or rather the industry as well as the academia, is a huge topic in itself, and probably I'll reach out to you through Dr. Mandir to try and see if we can showcase something like that specific to the Surat and the surrounding areas, because it's interesting and it is useful for the community at large. I'd like to thank Mr. Mehta as well, Mr. Rohit Mehta as well, for talking especially about MSMEs. As you know, a very, very large majority of our organizations, so to speak, in India and probably elsewhere in the world, even in the UK, is SMEs and MSMEs, and it contributes to a significant portion of the country's GDP as well. I'd like to also thank Nirav Jagani for his talk about with a twist about AI and the new technologies per se, and how it impacts, how it is going to impact rather the future as well. And I thank you all for being here, and a special thanks to Mr. Shukla for taking care of all the administrative, all the last minute requests, all the things with respect to administration between Impact Global and SGCCI. I'd like to, of course, thank the team that has been instrumental and helping in the administrative capacity. I'd like to thank Mr. Ketan Desai, the president of SGCCI, for having kindly agreed to be our co-host. And I'd like to, of course, last but not the least, thank Dr. Niravmandir again for being instrumental in making sure that this collaboration between two organizations, one very big, which is SGCCI, and us as Impact Global, virtual conference. We've done online, offline, rather physical conferences many years, but this is our first venture in the virtual. And I truly thank, from my team, the entire team at SGCCI. Thank you very, very much.